Hey, welcome to Expanding GitHub Security Capabilities Through Integrations. I'm Jose Palafox, and I'm a business development manager here at GitHub covering our security product portfolio. With me today, I've got three awesome panelists, and we're going to talk about some of the mechanisms in GitHub that you can use to scan your application code, your infrastructure code, and help train developers to react better to security vulnerabilities. As you've been hearing through the conference, and as you'll keep hearing throughout the conference, security is incredibly important to us, and we've added a number of new features to help secure your applications. CodeQL is GitHub's own security product that scans your application code base for vulnerabilities. And we'll hear from some of our partners that are extending the software development lifecycle security posture further on down. So we've got friends here from Anchor, Accurix, and Secure Code Warrior. And I'll let them start off by introducing themselves, and we'll talk through how these products can help further secure the software development lifecycle. Alfredo, you want to kick it off with an introduction?
Yes. Hi, Jose. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. My name is Alfredo Deza. I have almost 2 decades of software development experience, and I currently work at Anchor with the tools and integrations team, trying to get all of the reporting integrated with GitHub Actions, so that whenever vulnerabilities are coming up, we have accurate reporting at any given point in time when we're interacting with GitHub specifically. Excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, thanks, Alfredo. Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Joshi. I'm a member of technical staff at Accurix. I've been working here for about 5 months now. So here at Accurix, our mission is to detect and fix cloud infrastructure misconfigurations in design, build, and runtime. I'm thrilled to be here because DevSecOps is such an interesting field, and I really love learning and talking about it. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Excited to have you here, Sarah. Jop, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jop Karan Singh. I am part of the founding team and customer success SME at Secure Code Warrior. First of all, Jose, thank you so much for having us. It's a great pleasure to be on this panel talking to you about integrating Secure Code Warrior with GitHub. I think it's quite an exciting thing for developers and for us as well. I think this is something that we've all been waiting on, is how we can tightly integrate security into the pipeline. My background, I'm a developer by trade, by profession, so I've done that my whole life. And then early on in my career, I saw the light when it came to AppSec, so I've been an AppSec practitioner. So before I was at Secure Code Warrior, I was working as an application security consultant at BAE Systems.
Awesome. So if I'm a developer and I've started writing an application, I'm using CodeQL to scan whatever language I'm using and pick up common mistakes or coding errors. And once I've done that, I want to package my application up into a container image so that I have a build artifact. And I think that's where Anchor really can help out. So Alfredo, you want to talk to us a little bit about what Anchor does with container scanning and how that can help customers identify other vulnerabilities that aren't in scope for CodeQL?
That's right. Well, the thing with Anchor, what we're trying to do is really stay on top on when vulnerabilities are being reported, and having a straightforward way of reporting those to whoever is developing. So what happens is that whenever I'm crafting a new application, I'm creating a production code, I may not be aware of dependencies that might have security vulnerabilities, since vulnerabilities are getting reported all of the time. So whenever there's a process behind the scenes that is continuously updating its database and continuously knowing what vulnerabilities are coming up, then that's definitely a good way to help not only build more secure software, but also ensure that the delivery process is more robust. That's basically the what we're trying to do with Anchor, and specifically with the GitHub Actions. The integration process allows us to report whenever there's a pull request, and some vulnerabilities may have been reported for a dependency. One of the ideas is that, say for example, if I'm a Node.js developer and I'm using some library, say Confabulation, which is like it's been around forever and it's pretty pretty stable, and I say, well, everything's fine with this library, no vulnerabilities have been reported. But the thing is that for the past 10 months or so, we've had around 8 security vulnerabilities reported for Node.js, which is the runtime. So as a Node.js developer, I may not be aware that vulnerabilities are getting reported against the runtime itself, even though my dependencies of the application that I'm currently developing are perfectly fine. So that's where Anchor comes in and can report accurately right there with GitHub Actions as preventing a pull request from getting merged, or even as part of a nightly run, for example, which is perfectly suited for GitHub Actions. So that's why it's important, and it allows developers that might not be aware of something that is coming up to be have that information right there to take some action.
Awesome. And once I've packaged my application into a container image and you've scanned it, I tend to write some configuration code for my cloud provider, maybe some Terraform or some kind of AWS CloudFormation template to deploy the software to my cloud environment. And I think Accurix here can help scan the configuration code. So Sarah, can you talk to us a little bit about what is infrastructure as code, and how does Accurix help detect security vulnerabilities in the configuration itself?
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. So infrastructure as code, or IAC, enables developers to define and manage cloud infrastructure through code. Examples of IAC that you may be familiar with, like you said, are Terraform, AWS CloudFormation, Kubernetes YAML, Helm charts, etc. So the benefit of IAC is that it helps developers to avoid cloud deployment inconsistencies, and it also increases developer productivity. However, simple misconfigurations in IAC can create serious exposures, and in fact, in the last 2 years alone, cloud infrastructure misconfigurations have contributed to 200 breaches that exposed over 30 billion records. So here at Accurix, we use the Open Policy Agent, or OPA framework, from CNCF to deliver policy as code. We have a library of 1,800 plus policies to scan your IAC, and it can detect common misconfigurations like S3 buckets open to the public, SSH ports open to the internet, open security groups, and much more. More importantly, though, the app helps you fix these issues by automatically generating the pull requests and also providing the code required to resolve these issues. You simply need to review and then approve the pull request. So we call this capability remediation as code. So now let me give you a real-life example of how policy as code can be used to mitigate risk. A few weeks ago, a security advisory was published about an unreleased bug in Kubernetes that can lead to denial of service in snapshot controllers. At a high level, this bug can be exploited under the following 2 conditions: if a cluster is running a vulnerable version of the snapshot controller, and if untrusted users are able to create volume snapshot resources in a specific API group. So after reviewing the security advisory, Accurix added a new policy to its library that checked the images used by controllers. If a vulnerable version is present, it raises a violation, and then it pinpoints the exact code that needs to be updated to use a non-vulnerable version. This enabled customers to detect and then eliminate the risk before deploying the infrastructure to production.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Once we've identified some of these vulnerabilities, we get some CWE alerts or some other kind of vulnerability database alerts. And Jop, I was hoping you could talk to us a little bit about what Secure Code Warrior can do with those alerts and how we can help train developers from making those mistakes in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with all these tools that we have that we're able to put into the pipeline and give that early feedback loop to the developers, we're able to surface the vulnerabilities much quicker. But unfortunately, these are application security tools, most of them. And in general, what we find is developers just do not have the skills to be able to fix these vulnerabilities. So if you're coming out of university today, you're a software engineer, the one skill that you're not taught is how to do things securely. You're taught how to write functional code, maybe you're taught some architecture type things, but not what it takes to write good quality secure code. So that's where Secure Code Warrior comes in. Our mission is to empower developers with the right skills and the tools that they need to be able to act as that first line of defense within their organization. Because if it comes down to it, I think everything these days is powered by technology. So if that's the case, if everything's being powered by a piece of code that originated from a developer writing it, developers really are the people that we should be targeting. They're the most critical piece of that puzzle. So we had a very interesting case study from a customer that speaks to kind of the power of teaching developers about secure coding. It's a US tier 1 financial institution, and they have a large number of developers, and they set themselves a lofty goal. They wanted to train all these developers on secure coding, on the top vulnerabilities that they were seeing within their organization, but also understanding that developers are busy. Developers are very overworked. They're always constantly chasing deadlines, being asked to add features. So they went about using Secure Code Warrior to achieve this goal. And the way they did it is by trying to build habits into the developers' day-to-day workflow. And what they did was assign the developers a task for every single day to go and do a security vulnerability challenge. Now, that challenge takes anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And the whole idea was you as a developer find your rhythm and you figure out when you want to do that. Is it on your bus ride or train ride to work? Is it early in the morning? Similar to how a lot of people read newspaper, maybe you go and do a security challenge. But basically, you do one challenge a day for 3 months and build that into your daily routine. And what they found at the end of that 3 months is that the developer accuracy level increased by 60%. So they were making less mistakes when it came to writing code. They were writing secure code from the beginning. And essentially what that translates to is obviously we're catching less bugs at the later end. So there's less security bugs for us to go and fix. We're exposing our applications less in production when it comes to these vulnerabilities with all these attackers. But also, if you look at it from an engineering function perspective, there is a massive gain to be had from a product velocity perspective because we don't have to come back and fix all of these vulnerabilities. And what we've tried to do with the GitHub integration is basically just act as an extension of that. So we've got a training platform where you can go in, you can have some very targeted training programs. But if you look at the power of the GitHub integration, the action ecosystem, it's that we're able to catch these things really early on. If a developer commits something, maybe they have a pull request, if we can surface bad things to them straight away, it's so much quicker for them to go and fix it. So if that's the case, one of the things that developers will need is targeted remediation advice. So if Anchor or Accurix comes back and says, hey, you've got this vulnerability with your Docker config, or if you're doing SAS scanning, you've got this web application or mobile vulnerability, as a developer, how do you go and fix it? And I think today what we find is that developers will go and remediate. It might not be the best way to fix it. Maybe it goes back again. And that's a normal thing that happens in the workflow. It's like 2 or 3 times for you to actually get the vulnerability right and fix it. So where we're coming in is once you've got all these amazing tools come in and find these vulnerabilities, we want to be able to enrich the results of these vulnerabilities with targeted advice on Secure Code Warrior. So we have a massive content library that covers everything from web, mobile, API, even mainframe like COBOL, and so on. So if there's a vulnerability found, we'll point you to a deep link within Secure Code Warrior that will say, hey, this is how you fix this particular CWE or this vulnerability within your language and framework. And this is going to be actual functional code APIs that you can use.
Awesome. One thing we've all mentioned and maybe hasn't been explicitly shared is how all these products integrate with GitHub. And so what I was hoping we could do next is talk about how these alerts show up in the UI and why it's important to present this information to developers while they're writing their software. So if we go to the next slide, I think, Alfredo, this sets you up to maybe talk through the kinds of alerts that Anchor is finding and how those are surfaced in the GitHub UI. Could you give us a little context of what's going on here?
Yeah, that's right. So the idea here is that you have, say, a container-based application with a Docker file, and you are able to build this container and create your application. And through the GitHub Actions, you build this container, and then we go in and start analyzing the different various layers and components of this completed container. So that's a crucial thing that happens here, because as a developer, you might not know what is getting pulled in. So by being able to build a container and then we go in and analyze this built image, we can accurately say, well, this is what would happen at the end of the day if this code and if this Docker file gets executed. We end up with a running container that will look like this, and then we correlate the software build of materials, like everything, the catalog that gets produced out of investigating what the contents are. And then a matching starts occurring if there's a package and a certain given version. And so what happens here is there's a couple of things. First, we were able to alert and prevent a certain pull request or a change in GitHub, given the type of reporting that we're getting. So you can actually say, well, I'm fairly certain that the vulnerabilities that are low risk or medium risk are good to go. But if there's anything that is critical, it's a critical vulnerability, like you need to stop these pull requests. So we're able to fine-tune what type of vulnerabilities are getting reported in the GitHub UI. And those are optionally sent over to produce a Serif report, which allows you to have a nice kind of like a table-based view of everything that is being reported, and you can actually go through different details. So it is not only the reporting that is interesting; it's also that you can actually say, "Well, I want to see what critical vulnerabilities are being reported, where they're coming from, what software is affected, how is it that that's affecting me, how does this thing got matched." And which are important and critical details when you're developing an application. You might not be aware where that information is coming from. So that's kind of like what we're seeing here on this slide. That's basically kind of like the workflow.
Nice. And I know, Sarah, you've got something similar with Accurix. Maybe on the next slide, you could walk us through what the Accurix reports look like when they're scanning your infrastructure as code.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can get the Accurix app from the GitHub Marketplace and sign up for free. Once you do that, you simply need to specify the repo or repos that you want to scan. The app will begin scanning the repo and then report violations in the Issues tab, as you can see here on this screenshot. Each issue reported has an associated severity level with it, so it'll be high, medium, or low. As issues are detected, the app helps developers fix them by automatically generating pull requests and then providing the code required to resolve these issues. So if you go to the next slide, there we go. Developers simply need to review and then approve the pull requests. So as we can see in this example, the vulnerability is to ensure that S3 buckets have server-side encryption at rest enabled. So we provide some information about remediation, and then we add the code to resolve it in the pull request. So this functionality allows developers to leverage IAC to achieve speed and agility, while simultaneously ensuring that compliance and security best practices are observed.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And I know, Jop, you built a GitHub action that kind of intercepts some of these reports that are going into the GitHub UI and then appends them with the contextual training information. So maybe you can talk us through, if we're using the Secure Code Warrior add-on here to any of these security tools, what that looks like and kind of what the developer experience is on the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll do is once all these AppSec tools have worked very hard and they've found all of these vulnerabilities or flaws, and they pinpoint what CWEs or CVEs they are, we will enrich that information with training links. And training information. So you'll see over here, I've got a pull request view. So this is a Node.js application. Someone has raised this pull request, and there happens to be a vulnerability in it, which is reflected cross-site scripting. Now, if the user already knows how to fix it, great, they can go and fix it. Or, let's say in the case of Accurix, sometimes they just raise a pull request and all you need to do is review and fix it. That would be amazing if that just happened. But in a lot of cases, you have to actually go in and do it yourself, and you have to figure out, A, what that vulnerability is, and then B, okay, well, now that I understand it, I know why this is important for me to go and fix. Well, how do I actually go and fix it? So if you go over to the next slide, once you click on the training link from within the pull request from that comment, you will land on this particular page that you see on the bottom right hand side. And there's two things to note here. So we clicked on the link, and then if you look at number 2, we're actually in the language and framework. In this case, this was a Node.js Express application. So we're looking at a Node.js Express code base. And if you look at number 3, we're looking at a training piece of content for reflected cross-site scripting. And that's the whole idea. For me as a developer, I can go in very quickly, understand what this vulnerability is in Node.js, and then also the second part, how do I go about fixing it within my stack?
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, everybody. I think this was really good to kind of see how all of your tools integrate into the GitHub UI and provide more information to developers as they're working actively on their application. In the last 5 minutes here to take us out, I'd love to kind of understand what's coming next for your companies. Where's the product headed, or what are the next kind of set of problems on your horizon? Alfredo, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, that's right, Jose. Like I see in the near future a couple of different things that are pretty interesting. Personally, what I would like to see is a more and more integrations within GitHub for security vulnerability reporting. We have on the static analysis side of things, we already know when packages are specified for a certain dependency to be installed. And that could be a Docker file for Python that's set.py or requirements.txt. So we already know where packages are being declared at what particular version. And developers have the first thing that they're seeing is not some tab in some UI, but rather when they're seeing the code right in front of them, to have some sort of reporting right there and then. This is similar to different linting tools that exist today for most any language, where the linting occurs right there in the IDE or the text editor. So I think a better integration there that allows reporting security vulnerabilities in front of the developer, that would be tremendous. And the other one is so that's kind of like going left, but like the other interesting one is going all the way to the right when there's a dynamic application security testing, or DAST, when you have an application that is up and running and kind of like sandbox, and somehow it's pulling dependencies out of the blue that you were not getting accounted for. So I think those two are crucial, and I think more work will go into those areas to provide better reporting.
Sarah, what's new for Accurix, or what's on the horizon? Big features you're excited about?
Yeah, sure. So there are a lot of new and exciting innovations in the works at Accurix to help developers embrace security. As many of you know, in high velocity development environments where IAC is constantly being updated and issues are constantly being reported, it can be really overwhelming for developers to know like which issues to fix first. So at Accurix, we're going beyond policy as code and remediation as code with a capability that we call security as code. So this will automatically perform threat modeling and help prioritize risks based on severity. So let me give you an example of how this could have prevented a breach at a well-known clean energy company a couple of years ago. So in this breach, attackers found a Kubernetes server exposed to the internet, and the server did not have authentication enabled. The attackers found credentials stored inside the Kubernetes pod, and they were able to use these credentials to explore data within the company's S3 buckets. So here's how security as code could have been used to detect and mitigate this breach path. If a container scanning tool reported that credentials were found inside a Kubernetes pod, Accurix can then build threat models to analyze if that pod has any exposures. Specifically, it would be able to determine the following. So if the server was exposed to the internet, if authentication was not enabled for the server, if the credentials could be used to access any cloud storage services, and then the overall blast radius of the attack. I'm really excited about this capability because I believe in making security simple yet effective for developers. It's a really complex topic with lots of nuances, and so my goal is to help build a product that fits into developers' cloud-native workflows, helps them to be able to identify issues, and then also to be able to fix them without having to be security experts.
Awesome. Jalpan, what's going on with Secure Code Warrior next? Are you adding more frameworks or new vulnerability databases, or what's coming at us next?
So I think one of the things that we're always doing is adding new languages and frameworks and vulnerability databases. We actually just crossed the 50 language mark recently, but I'm gonna make place a big bet and say 2021, not just for SCW. I think in general for the application security industry is going to be the year of integrations. And I think mainly the reason for that is if you look at integrations or you look at partnerships, it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. I think it's more a case of 1 + 1 = 11. So hopefully, I think just as part of like everything that we've discussed today, people realize that by integrating all of these amazing tools together, you don't just get a greater effect of all of them. It's actually the combined effect is so much greater than the sum of its individual parts. So I think that's what we're going for. So we want to double down on integrations. And one of the things that I think we can really bring to the table is really, really, really bad code. 99% of the code that we have within SCW is bad code. So we have this massive library of really bad vulnerabilities. And if we look at all of these application security tools, we look at GitHub with its advanced security CodeQL. Partners can leverage our content, the thousands of challenges and code bases that we have to make their engines better. So you're better at detecting bad vulnerability patterns. Then I think on the flip side, the benefit that we can get from all of these tools is as we integrate together, there are probably blind spots that we have, because at the end of the day, all of these vulnerability databases, these challenges that we have are written by humans. So we're going to write about vulnerabilities that we know about, and we're going to completely ignore the ones that we don't know about. So I think taking advantage of the ecosystem, looking at tools like CodeQL, if you're able to identify what the gaps are in our own content based on these production tools that are running on open source repositories, on private repositories, we can then leverage that to identify the gaps and then build content in that particular area.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining the panel today. I hope those in attendance got to hear some good new information about how these tools integrate with GitHub. If you take a look at the last slide, all of these integrations are available today in the GitHub Marketplace, and help your development team shift left by going and installing them, give them a dry run. I think you'll like the results. So thanks a ton, and we'll see you next time.